Welcome to the Smart Connector podcast. As ever, I have an incredible guest for you tonight. Welcome, Ryan Margolin.
Hi, Jane. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And you're in Wexford, Ireland, aren't you, Ryan?
I am. Yeah,
Based
that's where
there.
I live.
With an incredibly successful international business that we're going to go on to talk about. So, Ryan's CEO of Professional Hair Labs, and he set out on a journey to create the world leading product in cosmetic bonding. We will talk about that. When his mother was poisoned by the chemicals in her hair care products. We're going to talk about that as well. So his business, Professional Hair Labs, has expanded its manufacturing tenfold, become one of the fastest growing businesses in the USA, having sold more than $50 million worth of product globally, which is an incredible achievement. And as well as this success, and partly because of it, he went on to create multiple businesses in service industries that are looking to create sustainable, high performing products and services. So great to have you here.
No, thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to the chat.
Yeah, me too. So, Ryan, let's start at the beginning. So, I'm really interested in this origin story of how you started Professional Hair Labs and what was this issue around your mother and I mean, I'm a cancer survivor myself of 11 years. I'm very conscious of chemicals in the environment and so on. So, love to hear what actually happened and what catapulted you into this path that's now become so amazing and so successful for you.
Yes, it started, when I was a kid. I grew up in an industry where both of my parents worked, which was the hair replacement industry. My mother was a master hair technician, and my father was a business owner, an entrepreneur, you could say. And when they met in New York, they opened up a hair replacement studio, and they had one in New Jersey for quite some time, and eventually moved down to Florida, where I was born in New Jersey, so I was born at the time when they had the studio, and then moved down to Florida, where we spend a lot of time as well. And in the industry that my parents worked in, it was quite niche. It's hair replacement. It's the non-surgical side. So there was a lot of people, who experienced hair loss. Some of them didn't want to go down the surgical route, so they went down the non-surgical route of wearing hair systems. So over the years, I learned just a lot about it from being in the studio.
Yeah.
After school, or some school days where I may not have been well, I was there, and I saw all the goings on. So it kind of became very familiar to me. And over the space of time that they owned the hair replacement studios, my mother got chemical poisoning from the products that she was using. The industry was very unregulated. Manufacturers were putting chemicals in the products, and no matter how safe you were with the application process or the ventilation, ultimately there were known carcinogens in the products, and inhaling those over a period of time created a major health problem for my mother. So it forced her into early retirement. Now, fortunately, she's okay now, but she never was able to go back to work full time. So it led my dad then to look at the whole scenario, and they eventually decided, hey, look, we're going to sell the studios. And he went into focusing on working with chemists to manufacture a safe product for not only hair wearers but for the technicians. And because this was an innovative idea at the time, uh, obviously education was going to be the major roadblock in between getting the product to market and actually having a viable product that people trusted. So it eventually took some time. So if you think about this was in '94 that the my dad created this product and this product line. And throughout the next 15 years, what was '94 to about the next 15 years, the product line kind of stayed quite stagnant. Product was added to the line maybe once every couple of years. Revenue of the business grew from, say, 5 figures to 6 figures, and it kind of remained in the low six figures, say 200 to 300 over the space of 15 years. And in 2009, the business had spent so many years being stagnant that my dad had a conversation with me at that point, because I was kind of going off on my own path. I was working in sales and marketing for years in different jobs. And what ended up happening when the crash came in 2009, it kind of forced everyone to really take perspective of where they were at and what they wanted to do. So there was an opportunity there, which initially, when my dad offered it to me, I refused it. I was like, no, I don't really want to move to Florida. I was in Wexford at the time. My wife and myself had one daughter, and we didn't want to really take that move. But upon reflection, it took a little bit of time. We decided, hey, look, let's try it. Let's see what happens. What's the worst that could happen? So we picked up in 2009, and we moved to Florida, and I went straight into the business there. I started from the ground. I was filling bottles, learning all about the products, the ins and outs of how they work, why they work, and why they were formulated. I always knew the core mission of the company because we experienced everything growing up. And what happened from that point was I spent the first 6 months learning about the business, and I realized that the business was doing low six figures at the time, so there was a lot of spare time. And I'm not the type of person to sit around and be bored. I think idle minds can be quite dangerous. So I spent around 3 months between different sales calls and stuff. I spent 3 months manually building a database of every single hair replacement studio in the United States. And I scraped Google for it because at that time, there wasn't really technology or software to make that process easier. And what we did then is we decided to strip the whole company back to its bones. We took away the branding, the messaging, the website, product labels, and we built everything back up from the ground up to reposition the company before we decided to launch. So what we did then, we did some really, really simple things. And I'm a firm believer in the simplest solutions create the biggest impact. So what we did at that point was there was always this base formulation for this adhesive product that was being used in the industry. At the time, the technology didn't exist from an ingredient perspective to give it the water and oil resistant properties that we were looking for, and we knew would make a huge difference. Opportunity aligned in 2009, where we were fortunately able to get our hands on this ingredient and go back to the drawing room and reformulate. So through our testing over the space of about 6 months, we were able to finally send it out to some studios for testing. The studios were our testing demographic were raving about it. So we knew we had a good product on our hands, and we named the product Ghost Bond. And what we did then from that point was we started to make a marketing plan. And the marketing plan was really simple. Make a simple website, informative website with a professional online store where only professionals could access it. We printed a postcard back and front, the front with the product, the benefits, designed really nice. And on the back, testimonials from 2 key industry leaders who have used the product and were trusted. And we sent it out. There was 5,000 postcards that were printed all together. And there was only 3 of us at the time. So we didn't want to send all 5,000 out at once. We split it up into 3 just in case the phone started ringing off the hook. And sure enough, it did. The phone started ringing within 3 days when these postcards started to arrive. Studios were really interested. They were like, yeah, we want to order a bottle. We want to try it. No problem. We send the bottle. They pay for it. 3 weeks later, we get another phone call from them. Yeah, I'd like to order 3 or 5 bottles. And then eventually, you're looking at wholesale quantities of 25 large bottles for their studios. And before you knew it, 18 months later, we tripled revenue.
Wow.
So yeah, we looked at that situation then as like, okay, we have validated this product in an industry that really didn't know too much about who we are and what we do. And after repositioning ourselves, we were able to relaunch into the marketplace. And not only just word of mouth spread like fire, but we were able to reach a lot more studios that we didn't really have the capability of reaching before. And we decided to then reinvest a lot of those profits into opening up a European facility to distribute globally. And that's how the journey started in 2009.
That's amazing. So Ryan, while you've been talking, I've just been trying to kind of, I was obviously I'm not a hair professional. I don't have a hair studio. I've never had anything to do with hair replacement or anything I've been to the hairdressers to have my hair cut and colored, and that's about as blow dry, every now and again. And that's about as far as it goes. So what I'm interested in is actually, what this bonding stuff actually does. I mean, what is hair replacement? Is it, you see adverts on the tube here in London, for example, of these guys, with these kind of like dots on their head and things
Yeah.
like that. Or, my daughter loves to get this kind of like real hair extensions to make her look very glamorous and
Yeah.
have much longer, glossier hair than she has normally. So, that's about as far as it goes in terms of my personal knowledge, around this. So what is this? What is
Yeah.
this industry all about? And what is this stuff?
Yeah, it's changed a lot over the last decade. When I first entered the industry full time, it was really, you had two options. You had the surgical or non-surgical. And going
Okay.
back to your comment about seeing things on the tube where they have little dots on their head, that's the surgical side of hair replacement. So that would be grafts implanted into the scalp. Great, it's a great method. It works amazingly well, but not everyone wants to go down a surgical route. So we operate in the non-surgical space. So what our product actually does, it's an adhesive. It's a cosmetic adhesive that's safe for skin, and it's water-based. It's not solvent-based, and you apply it to the scalp in the area that you're going to apply the hair unit or the hair system. You have to think about it. Baldness operates in many different ways, and it comes in many different forms. Some people have total baldness. Some people only have it in specific areas. So hair systems are basically cut to fit the areas of the scalp that need to be covered up. So our adhesive would go onto the base of the unit and also to the scalp in a specific application method. And once it's placed into place, it would cure over a period of time, and it would stay put for 2 to 4 weeks, depending on the person's lifestyle. If they're very active, it might last a little less. But ultimately, what it does is it gives people an undetectable hairline and an undetectable look on their head where you can't tell that they're actually wearing a hair system. It looks like their natural hair. And
Oh,
what I love about the way the industry has gone is that wearing a hair system is much less of taboo as it used to be. People are open to talking about it, and they're open to sharing their experiences. And I think it's a huge thing, especially for self-confidence, because people do lose a lot of self-confidence when they lose their hair. It doesn't bother some people, but for some people it can destroy them. And I see this every day. So being able to talk about it and share the experience is half the battle in the industry. And I think the way that the industry has moved, it's very positive, because people are looking at this solution as a non-invasive way of literally changing their life. And that's what our
yeah.
products help do. They help facilitate that.
Yeah, and in a way, it's part of a much wider trend in terms of, cosmetic work, aesthetic work, all of that kind of thing. I mean, everybody, well, if you're interested in this, people know that the whole aesthetics industry is booming, and it's, everything from kind of, I mean, I've got veneers on my teeth, so, veneers to all sorts of kind of aesthetic treatments, and really just making your hair look as good as it can be is just important to some people, and there's no shame in that. It's everybody wants to feel their best, don't they? And when they
Course.
look their best, some people don't care. Some people looking their best is, it equates to feeling their best, doesn't it?
Of course it does. And look, I don't think there's a right or wrong in the situation. I think it's all about the end of the day. When you step outside that door, are you stepping out as the best version of yourself, or do you feel the best version of yourself? And whatever that looks like, that's your business. And as long as you're happy, that's all that matters.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, right. So we've cleared that up. Okay, that's fantastic. Um, yeah, so Ryan, it's just amazing that what I think is really interesting is, first of all, you had a niche product in a niche market. That's very interesting. Secondly, you kind of caught the zeitgeist, as it were. It was that there's a thirst, isn't there, for sort of more natural additive free, less harmful products generally, because people are becoming more conscious and aware of the harmful effect of chemicals in
Yeah.
our environment. So I think you caught the zeitgeist there. You had a niche product for a niche market, and you really started from the ground up in kind of baby steps. I think that's what's really interesting to me because, $50 million worth of products and one of the fastest growing companies in the US is an incredible achievement by anybody's standards. Well done to you, first off. That is just amazing. And the other thing that I think is really interesting is that it was an industry that you already understood and you knew about because your parents had been in that industry. And when you came into it, it was not like you had to learn about it from scratch.
Yeah,
So,
I knew the
y
basis of it, and I think,
yeah.
because there was a personal connection to it, I think it made the journey, a little bit more enjoyable as we saw it grow. Some of the challenges, look, when you hit roadblocks or hurdles along the way, I think your personal connection to the mission or the focus of the company or the core of the company is vitally important because those are the things that keep you going at times where you don't want to go anymore.
Yeah. So I'm talking about, roadblocks and hurdles and so on. I love to hear, what was your biggest one, Brian?
There's been so many of them.
Yeah.
I think my biggest roadblock at the beginning, was the lack of my own personal development. Uh,
Oh.
and you know what? I think that, for example, when we tripled revenue back in 2009, when we change things in the company. We were on. I felt like we were on top of the world. We were on fire. We could keep going. And I decided we were going to move back from Florida, to Wexford, and we were going to open this facility, and we were going to do the same thing in Europe that we did in the US, and it was going to be amazing. And then we opened up in Europe, and it fell flat in its face. And
Oh.
that was part. That was the start of the journey of personal development for me because I realized that, what works in one place doesn't necessarily work in the next. And I learned very quickly that, building relationships and the expectation level of doing business in Europe and different countries is much different. And people just are they have different personalities, and that navigating that kind of landscape through the different countries in Europe was a huge challenge. But after about 6 months, we started to figure it out. I mean, look, at the end of the day, no one person can do this on their own. So, fortunately, myself and my two brothers are involved in this, and we own the company now, and we're pushing things forward. But really, without their assistance and support, a lot of these roadblocks that come up, would be very difficult to get over. And that's why, I believe, when you're on this road of personal development, your circle is vitally important.
Definitely, definitely. So you talk about your brothers. I mean, were they the most, the key people in your network, or did you have other people to support you along the way?
No, yeah, the answer to that is yes, they were very key in and still are in my own network. But I did actually focus on, building my network and relationships with individuals who I aspired, who inspired me to be a better person, and more importantly, who didn't, throughout the journey of learning from them, didn't make me feel like the fact that I didn't know something. They didn't make me feel less than, and I think that's hugely important because if you have a mentor or anyone that you look up to for advice that makes you feel ridiculous for asking a question or getting something wrong, you got to make some changes quite quickly.
Yeah, that's a really important point, and before we started, we were talking about our mutual acquaintance who shall remain nameless, but he happens to be my mentor at the moment, who is also coincidentally a very good friend of yours, and, you're really actually a shining example of somebody who, is both humble, as a good leader should be, but also extremely knowledgeable and helpful and really gives his all, so thank you, Stephen, you know who you are.
He does, and
Yeah.
it was really nice to hear that. I didn't realize, that you had known Stephen, but he is one of the very, few people I would consider, an actual genuine leader who, he doesn't look down on people. He just does what he does best, and he helps as many people as he can along the way.
Yeah, yeah. So would you say that, how has your mindset changed then as a result of, diving into your personal development, hitting those roadblocks, coming out the other side? I mean, how are you a different person to the person that you were, say, all those years ago?
Very different. I mean, um, I only had this conversation with myself not too long ago, maybe I'd say 6 to 8 months ago, and the the opportunity that pushed me into the space of having to think about it was I was accepted to do a TEDx talk, and part of that was around the road of personal development, and it really made me think about the key things along my journey that helped me deal with some of the bigger issues. And I really broke it down to really five things, and they were all really around mindset. So for me, it was the first realization was that you kind of have to learn to be your own hero. Like no one is coming to save you, and in the
Mm.
times when things get really tough, if you're expecting a pat on the back or some applause or some motivation, more times than not, it's not going to be there. So you have to learn how to do it yourself. Um, Another key thing for me was learning to manage my focus during the time that I had. There's a lot of distractions in the world, especially in this day and age, and
Yeah.
being able to push all those out to the side was another thing. For me, I realized with all the mistakes that we've made and I've made over the years, you can't look at it as a loss. It's only really a loss if you refuse to learn from it. Not even if you stop. I mean, a lot of people stop and look. Unfortunately, that's the only guarantee of not achieving something. But if you're not learning, to me, it's just as bad. Going back to what we said as well about surrounding yourself with the right people, I think that is probably the most important thing, because if you don't have the right circle, um, you're just going to be held back. And you know what? The unfortunate part about it is, the people who hold you back sometimes are the people closest to you, and you
Oh,
need to
yeah.
separate that, because what ends up happening is that they tell you can't do something, which is really them just projecting their own fear on you.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
so you have to learn that. That's a quick one you need to learn out the gate. And I think lastly for me was it was about controlling fear, or as I refer to it, fire. Look, fire has the ability to do one of two things. It can either burn everything down around you, or you can control it to keep you warm. And fear is quite a good analogy of that, because if you learn how to control your fear and stop worrying about the things that haven't even happened yet, um, you start to care less about the eventual potential outcome and just go get it.
Oh, that's so powerful and so amazing. I just love all those lessons. Did you talk about them all in your TED Talk?
I did actually. Yeah,
Yeah.
they were the key things that I spoke about. And, look, I mean, obviously it all starts with the journey, and I've had a couple of key moments that kind of sparked that journey, where it gave me this stark realization that no matter who you are, or, who you have around you, ultimately you will eventually face challenges. And it's what you do in the face of that adversity that really counts. And I think that shapes you. At the end of the day, you can't control anything but your own actions. So, the ball's always in your court.
That's very true, and I was actually talking to somebody the other day about, interviewing Mike Clare, who was, he's actually the founder of Dreams Beds. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but
Yeah, I have
anyway.
actually. Yeah.
Yeah, so he sold his business for 222 million. He actually lives locally to me, very, very nice guy, and I was talking to him, and, what really kind of, hit home to me was, look, he's sold a business for 222 million. How many people do that? That is a massive
Yeah,
achievement,
it is.
and yeah, and then when I talked to him about his journey, I mean, a lot of very successful people I've noticed are very decisive. They are, of course, they have to be in a way. They have to be leaders, obviously, to other people, because a lot of decisions rest on their shoulders. But talking to him, he said, "Well, I tried this and I tried that, and this didn't work and that didn't work." And I was really struck by his journey, that we often think that with these really, really successful people, that everything they do, it all transforms to gold. And it's not true. It's just what he said, these were his words. He said, "I found one thing that worked, and so I just did it over and over again, and then I tried other things along the way that didn't work, so then I went back to the thing that was working." And, simple, very, very simple, but
When
very interesting.
when you break it down, yeah, literally one out of maybe 10 things you try will actually be effective. But when you break it down, that one thing that works is usually the simplest thing. And
Yeah.
that's what I've learned. We've tried to build complex teams. It's fallen apart. We've tried to build complex systems, which we thought would be easier for the customer. It's all fallen apart. And when we went back to it, we ended up creating, even for our lead gen in our business, one funnel, one simple solution. And that's what really made everything turn, because then what happened is that one simple solution put the ball in our court to where we had this information, and then it was our responsibility to go get it. We had to get on the phones. We had to hire teams to handle emails. We had to build the systems then behind it. So I agree with that 100%. And that's what people don't see is very little of what successful businesses try actually work. And
Yeah.
think about if that one thing works and they achieve such a high level of success in their business. Think about what it would look like if all those other 10 things worked. It just, you'd be talking Amazon level success in a business. And look, I mean, I think we can all probably say that Amazon have probably made 100 million more mistakes than any regular business. So look, the success is not in the wins, it's in the losses, because that's where you learn.
Yeah, I love that. That's really, really powerful. It's such an interesting conversation. I'm loving this. So, okay, so the other interesting thing about what you just said was this thing about sometimes the winning streak, as it were, is in simplicity.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting, because I think there's also a misconception that the bigger a business gets, the more successful it gets, the more complex it gets. And what you've just said turns that on its head.
Mm.
So I'm very interested to explore that further. So how does this concept of simplicity come in? What is the connection to success?
I think it's in analysis, really. For us, it was in analysis, or for me, it was in analysis anyway. So we tried a lot of different things. And when we came back to what really worked, it was really the simple things that worked. I'll give you, a prime example. We started, after we hit the 8-figure mark in the business and we started to grow, after a couple of years, naturally the thing, that enters your mind as CEO, or even, COO or vice president or whatever it may be, is that, look, we really need to get, good people on our team that are experienced and know exactly what they're doing, and they can help bring their experience to the company in a way that will help. But what you also need to realize is that there's a lot of other dynamics inside of that can overly complicate the operations, because you may not necessarily bring someone in who has experience in your niche. They may bring experience from another niche, and it may create chaos in your culture and your environment. And we have experienced that a few times in the past. And unfortunately, things didn't work out. We had to go back to the drawing board. So, what we realized is that, again, going back to the simplicity of it all, is, we look at hiring for the personality rather than the experience all the time, because, you can actually train and you can invest time and you can help people achieve the level of success that they want to personally, because they feel a part of something that's actually doing something viable in the world. And you get a much better result in the end, because you're not bringing in all of that other fluff, in my eyes. And that's that, to me, what, from a hiring perspective, that was only one aspect, but that's where simplicity was a huge, it showed me very clearly that, let's just keep this simple. Let's just look for the right people. Let's forget about what's on paper, and let's just look for the right personality and the right attitude. From a marketing perspective, you can bring it back to simplicity again. As our product started to gather traction in the consumer marketplace, when the industry shifted a little bit, we were heavily reliant on third-party platforms to get sales through our distributors and our wholesalers. One of the key things, much like, the likes of, say, Adidas or Nike they've taken a direct route to consumer, because they realize unless they have that direct route, they're exposed to the willingness of supply of the distributor or the wholesaler. That's why they have reduced their accounts down to about 10%, because they're going direct to consumer, so they can actually protect their business. So what we did when we noticed that this was happening and we weren't getting any real data, is that we started to play a little clever. We brought it back to simplicity. we set up a quick Zapier, zapped the mailing addresses off of out of the Amazon accounts, out of the eBay accounts, and we did a direct mail to them, and we offered an SLO, a self-liquidating offer, where we gave a free bottle of product if they paid for shipping, and in turn we had their email address. So that was a way to generate direct-to-consumer demand. Even though we don't supply a large amount of product direct-to-consumer, it's really through all our distributors. But we're adding another layer of security and protection to get our product information out there and transform the industry. So that was another point where simplicity saved the day again, because, if you rely on your wholesalers and distributors to give you information, in most cases, you're not going to get it, because sometimes they don't even have it themselves. They're just relying on people walking in off the street into a brick and mortar shop and buying the product. So that was another key thing for us. And then in terms of our systems, we built a lot of complex systems, but then what we realized is the biggest impact was in one single funnel. Somebody comes in, they enter their name, their email address, their phone number. We ask for a business registration certificate, and off you go. And then once we have those details, we're on the phones, we open the accounts, close the deals, and we start to nurture them and help them add products that are going to add value to their customers. So again, simplicity, just keep it simple. And then, look, I tell you, business is not overly complex. It's just hard work. That's it. If you're willing to do the work, and you're willing to pay attention, you will get results.
Yeah. So everything that you say is kind of, sparking lots of thoughts and ideas off in my mind. And I think the interesting thing about what you said about simplicity and complexity and so on, it does come back to focus, doesn't it? And of course, choice, because how we spend our time, what we put our focus into, is going to determine our results. And I think that is genuinely something a lot of people struggle with. I know that I do at times. I'm like, this whole thing about the shiny object, about trying the next thing. And I think particularly we get particularly vulnerable to that if we've launched something and we're still in early days with it and we're still not getting the traction that we need. That there's always a temptation, isn't there, to kind of jump ship and try something different. And then you're going down another rabbit hole, aren't you? So how do you stop yourself from doing that, Ryan? I think is the question I wanted to ask.
I used to do that.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah,
Okay, so
what I
you
realized,
identify with that then.
yeah, absolutely. And what I realized is that all it does is create confusion. It creates confusion for yourself. You can't analyze correctly. It creates confusion for your team. They don't really truly know what they can go all in on and stay invested in.
Yeah,
And it creates confusion for the company as a whole. The only way to actually do that is look at things kind of very linear. It's like, okay, look, I know if you're just starting a business, whether you have one customer, no customers, or 10 customers,
yeah,
realistically, you're able to handle all those queries and everything through simple communication forms of email, text, phone, whatever. It is always good to do a little bit of research to say, okay, well, look, I know if 10 customers, nurturing these guys and handling their accounts requires 8 hours of my time a day. I know that I've got my week pretty much full. What can I do, or what software is available that can help me automate that whole process, right?
mm,
And that's all you have to know. You don't have to go down playing with it or toying with it, because if you've got 10 customers that that are taking up all of your time, rest assured you can hire someone on a third-party platform to implement that automation for you. You just have to think about how you're going to automate it. And some people do struggle with that.
yeah,
But I do think, and that's why I think where the distraction comes, because they feel like, oh, I need to know how to do X, Y, and Z before I do this. And it's like, no, just get going and get started, have a bit of a plan and say, okay, well, when I max out my time, this is how I plan on automating it. And don't do a thing until you get to that point. Simple as that. And that's how you remove the distractions. It's by doing a little bit of analysis, parking it, focusing on what's working and what you're doing and bringing in the revenue and servicing the customers, and then letting the rest take it to take its place. I mean, I've made so many mistakes in terms. So one of the things that I do every so often, I do a time study, right? And I learned this from a mentor of mine. I worked with him for many years. And he basically showed me, how to correctly do a time study. And it was really simple. I spent 2 weeks where I'd note everything that I was doing every 15 minutes. And at the end of those 2 weeks, I would split it up into tactical, strategic, and self-care. And if I was spending more time in tactical than I was in strategic, I had a very optimized list of what I needed to plan to offload to move out of the tactical place. Because if you're in a tactical place, you're too hands-on with your business. You can't be strategic enough. When you start to grow your company, that's vitally important to keep on top of. Because if you continually fall into a tactical position, you're not going to be able to effectively do the things correctly to grow the company. People are looking for direction. They're looking for advice. They're looking for how to bring the company and navigate it. And if you're actually doing this stuff and not leaving it to somebody else, it's never going to happen. You're not going to grow. And I think personally, we lost about 1.5 years of growth because of me being the bottleneck. And that was a huge realization for me, because when we started to plateau, that controlling the fire analogy I gave you of fear, I got hit with a huge thing of fear, be like, oh no, it's over. It's going downhill now. But I was actually told, no, you're just bottlenecking it. This is what you need to do. And that was the importance of having someone in the circle who could point it out to me.
That's really, really fascinating. And I have actually heard of that thing about breaking your time or your days or whatever into 15-minute chunks and monitoring where your time goes. I actually heard about that from another podcaster, in fact. But I haven't heard about splitting it up into those three areas: tactical, strategic, and self-care. And that makes so much sense, and again, it's just a very, very simple concept, isn't it, really?
It is simplicity. And it
Yeah,
was, now look, don't get me wrong, it was a pain in the ass because you're notating as close as you can to every 15 minutes.
yeah.
But ultimately, at the end, you have a very clear picture of where you're spending your time. And I think, as a leader or someone who's growing into different roles in the company, it's vitally important.
Yeah, really interesting. So just, out of interest, this thing about self-care and how much in terms of, the ratio of, strategic, tactical, and self-care, how if you went to your mentor and said, "Right, I 50% of my time is, self-care," what do you think he or she would say?
Is your business at the point where you're happy with your life?
Aha.
'Cause if it is, you're good, you know?
Yeah.
But if you've
Uh-huh.
got more to achieve and you want more, in terms of what, where you want the business to grow or to go, look, I mean, for me personally, I think, 20% self-care is quite a good place to be in. For me, it works. I was at a point where I was at about 2 or 3%, when there were certain parts of the business that were growing. And to me, that's not good for your mind at all. You need space for yourself, because you don't have space to be creative. You don't have space to think. You don't have space to plan, really. So the self-care aspect is vitally important. Now, look, I know people who are 100% in that 50% of self-care, and their businesses are thriving, but they've invested the time needed to train the people well and develop them to run their companies. So it's possible. And I believe it just comes down to simply what you want for yourself.
Yeah, very, very important point. Yeah, for sure. Well, that's really fascinating. So it's like a sliding scale in a way.
Yeah, it is
Yeah,
actually. It
yeah,
is.
yeah, that's amazing. Well, I can see, Ryan, from talking to you that you have a very smart strategic brain. So for me, it is no accident that you've managed to get to the point where you're shifting $50 million worth of products. So yeah, it's been such a pleasure to speak to you. I have so enjoyed this interview together. And, I just wanted to end with asking you, if people want to get hold of you, if they want to find more, what's the best way for them to access you or your products?
Well, our website is prohairlabs.com. We're a cosmetic manufacturer. So, look, if there's anyone in the beauty space or the e-commerce industry that's looking to start a brand, or even has a brand and want to expand their product line, even if you don't choose to partner with us or do business with us, you'll come away from the call knowing a lot more than you probably did. My hangout is LinkedIn, but the company is on all major social media. Look at YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. So yeah, reach out on any of those platforms.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us here live on the Smart Connector Group and multiple other platforms tonight, Ryan. As I said, it's been a real pleasure, and I wish you every success with your journey going
Thanks very much,
forward.
Jane. It was a pleasure.